So, a very good morning to all of you. On behalf of the Medical Education Unit and the CPC team, it is my proud privilege to welcome you all today for the CPC. And today it has been organized by the Department of PMR, that is Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. So, to start with, may I request all the dignitaries to please grace the dais. Dr. Reema Meena ma'am, ADP, Dr. Monica Jain ma'am, ADP, Dr. Mrinal Joshi sir, ADP, MS and Director of RRC, Dr. Rajeshwari Jindal ma'am, PHOD, PMR, and Dr. Puneet Saxena sir, Senior Professor Medicine and Convener CPC. I request all of you to please grace the dais. Thank you, everyone. May I now request Dr. Puneet Saxena sir to please start the proceedings of today's CPC.
So good morning, everybody, and we welcome you again for the 21st episode of this series of CPC. And I'm very proud that we have been carrying it for almost 2 years now, entering the third year now. So today's CPC will be done by RRC department and the PMR department. So, and we all know that we gather here to know the department's progress and to learn about a nice case every time presented by the different departments. And every time, sometimes we think that what this department will present and what use this case will be to everybody. But end of the case, we find that these are very interesting cases and they touch upon all the specialties and are of use to majority of us, and we learn and take away something good from these cases. So I hope that today we will learn about the very historical and very outstanding department of PMR in SMS, and we all have been knowing that how well it has been serving the people for last so many years. So I welcome Dr. Rajeshwari Jindal. She is heading the department, and we have Dr. Nal also. He is director of RRC. So she will tell us about the department, and we will take the case. Thank you.
Hello, respected convener CPC Dr. Puneet Saxena ji, co-convener ADP Dr. Monica ma'am, ADP Dr. Reema ma'am, and ADP and MS Dr. Mrinal Joshi, and my seniors and colleagues, and students and allied health professionals and staff of the SMS Medical College. Before starting the detail about the department, a heartfelt tribute to Dr. Nandan Madhu sir, is my esteemed teacher, professor and former HOD. Dr. Nitin Patil, he is professor and faculty of the Department of the PMR. Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation in SMS Medical College was established in 1984 under the guidance of Dr. P.K. Sethi, and it is one of the oldest and largest department in India. Physical medicine and rehabilitation, also known as the rehabilitation medicine or physiatry, it aims to enhance and restore the functional ability and quality of the life of the person with physical impairment or disabilities affecting the neuromuscular system. According to the NMC curriculum, this specialty focuses through the multidisciplinary team approach in making use of the diagnostic and therapeutic armamentarium, including the education, counseling, prescription of the medicines, therapeutic exercises, equipment, injections, and surgical intervention for correction of the deformity, etc. These are the HODs of the department of the PMR, beginning to till date. They have done very hard work for upliftment and progress of the department. At present, PMR department have 3 units, 8 faculties, 4 medical officers and 5 senior residents, and 9 PG residents per year. And we have various allied health professionals such as the physiotherapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, and orthotists and prosthetists, and various nursing staff and official staff with us. We have 3 units in department. First unit headed by the Dr. Mrinal Joshi sir, and he is at present director of the RRC, and MS of the medical SMS medical SMS hospital. And I headed unit second, and Dr. Om Prakash ji headed the unit 3. These are the other faculty of the department. Jaipur food was invented by the Dr. P.K. Sethi with assistance of the Master Ramchandra Sharma. Dr. P.K. Sethi was awarded Magsaysay Award for the community leadership in 1981 and Padma Shri by the Government of India in 1981 for his work on the Jaipur food. This is the various list of the achievement and awards of the faculties of the PMR. These are the departmental publications in reputed journal and reputed journal and in national and international journals. And these among them, these are the top cited article of the department faculty. These are the list of conference in the CME and academic program of the department, which were organized regularly. And this is the post in the we released the photo and we released the poster release on the spinal cord injury day for spinal cord injury awareness. Department participated in actively participated in the in exhibition, science exhibition in which was organized by the SMS Medical College during the Platinum Jubilee celebration. These are the different areas where department of the faculty work. These are the various allied health services which is provided by the allied health professionals, which work under the specialist of the department. In OPD, we on an average 400 to 450 patients avail the OPD services daily or 1.4 lakhs per yearly. Generally, patients concerned to PMR OPD are related to the spine, brain injuries, strokes, muscles, bone, tendon, joints, or neuromuscular disorders, and for cerebral palsy, congenital deformities, post-pole residual palsy patients, or amputees, and sports injury and musculoskeletal trauma disorders patient, and various joint pain or rheumatoid disorders patients. This is a picture of the OPD. We have 90 bed indoor where various type of the patient admitted for rehabilitative interventions and conservative management. These are most commonly the spinal cord injury patients or musculoskeletal trauma disorder patient and patient admitted for the rehabilitative interventions are cerebral palsy, brain injury, strokes, congenital deformities and other deformities. Various patients admitted in department for the orthosis and prosthesis. These are the meningomyelinosis, hemophilic amputees and others. This is a picture of wards in PMR department. We have 6 wards: paraplegia 1, 2, male ward 1, 2, and high dependency unit and the female ward. We conservatively treat the cervical spinal injury by applying the cervical tractions, and if there is an undisplaced fracture of the C1, C2 with no neurological deficit, then we also apply the halotraction, which are showing in the male ward. The department also performed operative procedures in this major and minor surgeries. Common rehabilitative surgery we do as the single stage multi-level surgery for the cerebral palsy patient, adductor release, obturative nephrectomy, sutures and modified sutures for the hip deformities, hamstring release, Wand's procedure, and the quadricep plastic surgery for the knee deformities or knee disorders, and Lee and L lengthening, tendon transfer, wall stenotomy, Stidler, and posteromedial soft release, and tibial posterior lengthening, other deformity corrective surgeries for the ankle and foot deformities. We also perform the amputation and revise amputation for the rehabilitation of the patients, and flap and SSG for the various type of the pressure management in spinal cord injury patients. This is the picture of the operation theatre, and we are here performing single stage multi-level surgery. More than 170 minor procedure or intervention we do in department per month. for pain management. These are the ultrasound guided or blind intra-articular or peri-articular soft tissue injections and different nerve blocks. Example, supraescapular nerve blocks, genicular nerve blocks, and subcutaneous nerve blocks. We also manipulate and do various type of the corrective cast for the CTV and cerebral palsy patient, and anesthetic foot and foot cast for the anesthetic foot and ulcer with ulcer. Caudal epidural injections for the back pain management, and platelet plasma therapy for the injured tendon, ligaments, muscles, and joints, and various types of the polotherapy and hydrodissections for the joint disorders, and peripheral neuronal blocks of the phenol for the spasticity management. We are also doing the therapeutic use of, we are also using the botulinum toxins for spasticity, dystonia, and bladder disorder management. Our senior faculty were performing the ultrasound guided nerve blocks, are resident applying the cast. Physiotherapists and occupational therapists provide the physiotherapy and occupational therapy for the OPD and IPD patients and rectal patients. And we have indoor gym for IPD patient on third floor of the RRC, where we have new latest machines for the rehabilitations. Examples, Motomed and the tailwind machines, and we provide the virtual rehabilitation, biofeedback trainings, and the gait training, and they have their various type of the equipment and machines for the rehabilitative exercises. This is a picture of physiotherapy hall or indoor gyms. We have electrotherapy facility and department where we for the neuromuscular disorder patients. These are the therapeutic ultrasound, shockwave therapy, shockwave diathermy, interferential current therapy, laser therapy, and etc. And this picture is from electrotherapy hall where allied health professional or physiotherapist applying the electrotherapy to the patients. We have orthotic and prosthetic section, the basement of the RRC. On an average, more than 50 amputee and the patient with other disabilities attend the PMR department on daily basis, and various prosthesis and orthosis or assistive aids and wheelchairs are distributed to these patients and indoor patient on the daily basis at the free of the cost. We also have the speech therapist, which provide the speech therapy for the speech disorder patients, and occupational therapists provide the occupational therapy to help the individual to regain or improve the activity of the daily living, transfer activity, work skills affected by the neuromuscular disorders. And we have electrodiagnostic and electrodynamic study lab on the third floor of the RRC, where we do these studies for the research and diagnosis and the management of the neuromuscular disorders and the bladder dysfunctions. We have three musculoskeletal ultrasound machine in department, which is performed for both diagnosis. We are using these machines for the diagnostic and therapeutic purposes. The department has a well-equipped library, which is having around 1,530 books and 7 journals per year. This is a seminar hall where department have advanced teaching facility, around 100 seating capacity. We have academic classes for the PG trainees 5 days in a week. This is a picture of the Divyangjan board, where specialists of our department and other departments serve the specially able person by issuing the various disability certificate. Most of the times, our faculty engage in these disability boards. And there are different type of disability board: Divyangjan board, jurist board, memacity board, NEET UG, PG board, special board, recruitment board. So it's very difficult for the department to manage the IPD and OPD services with limited faculty. These are the few examples of the rehabilitated patients in last 5 years. This patient was sustained electric burn injury in 2014 and leads to the below-knee and bilateral below-knee left above elbow amputations due to the progressive infection. Revised bilateral lower limb amputation was performed under the supervision of Dr. Mrinal Joshi in left lower limb in 2018 and the right in the 2020. The patient was rehabilitated by applying the bilateral BK prosthesis followed by the gait training. At present, the patient drives a scooter and do every work independently and is currently employed as a manager in the gas pipeline. This is a video of his working. Okay. This patient had a history of the RTA with head injury, cervical spine injury with multiple fracture of the leg bone and on ventilator support for the 15 days. Admitted in the department of PMR in November 2024 for rehabilitations. The patient was rehabilitated by using the physiotherapy, occupational therapy, orthosis, electrical stimulation, gait training with assistive aids and speech therapy and other needful medications. And injection botulinum toxin was injected for the spasticity management. At present, the patient is walking and doing work, most of the work doing independently. This patient was admitted in the department of the PMR on 10th October 2023 with history of fall and slip with head injury and complaint of the not able to stand, walk and communicate. Patient was rehabilitated by using the supervised physiotherapy, occupational therapy, sprinting for upper limbs and orthosis for the lower limb, mirror therapy and virtual ray for the upper limb functionings, and speech therapy for communications and with needful medications. After rehabilitation, he was able to walk independently with AFO and communicate with the public and able to participate in recreational activities. This patient named Lakhan Singh was rehabilitated in the department of the PMR for cervical spinal cord injury. He is wheelchair ambulator and he won a gold medal in the Paralympic swimming in 1922. So another person, he also won the gold medal in Paralympic Games. He also rehabilitated in department. This case of postpone residual palsy admitted in the department of PMR 1 year back with the hand on thigh gait and fixed deformity of the right knee and shortening of the right and the deformity at the ankle. Deformity was surgically corrected by the Young's procedure at the right knee and the tail lengthening for the equinus deformity at right ankle. At present, patient is walking independently with a KFO. Thanks to all. Special thanks to Dr. Sonal for and Dr. Prakasan and Dr. Naresh, Assistant Professor of the Radiology Department.
To all present. Today, we are presenting a case of a 19-year-old female patient, resident of Jaipur, presented in Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, SMS Medical College, on 10th of Feb 2024, with chief complaints of pain in both knees and other joints since 10 years, unable to stand and walk for 5 years, difficulty in squatting and cross-leg sitting for 5 years, not able to extend legs since 3 years. History of presenting illness. Patient was apparently asymptomatic till 9 years of age, after which she developed an episode of fever with chills lasted for 2 to 3 days with no diurnal variation followed by generalized body ache. Patient visited and treated by a nearby private hospital without any significant relief. Gradually, patient starts having pain over small joints of hand which was associated with swelling and morning stiffness for 20 to 30 minutes and had difficulty in grasping objects. After that, multiple large and small joints starts to involve, including knee joint. Subsequent investigations at multiple centers, including pediatric department at JK Lone and medicine department of SMS Hospital Jaipur, led to diagnosis of juvenile idiopathic arthritis. She was treated with medications for about 4 years, during which her symptoms improved, but she developed fatigue and delayed growth, leading to discontinuation of treatment. At the age of 13 years, she switched to homeopathic medication for 2 to 3 years, following which her symptoms reappeared, associated with joint pain and restricted movements. She again consulted another practitioner who started medications and physiotherapy. Patient was taking medications irregularly since 10 years. She underwent several courses of physiotherapy without supervision, which provide temporary relief. However, symptoms recurred each time she discontinued therapy. Then patient consulted to a senior physician of Department of Medicine. From there, she was referred to Department of PMR, SMS Hospital for further rehabilitation. On 10th of Feb 2024, she presented in PMR OPD for further management. Patient had birth history of full-term normal delivery, no history of delayed crying, and no history of ICU admission at birth. No antenatal, perinatal, or postnatal history of asphyxia or maternal infection. Immunization history. All vaccinations were done as per National Immunization Schedule. Past history, no history of tuberculosis, asthma, bleeding disorder, diabetes, hypertension, or thyroid disorder. Past medical history, patient was taking intermittent medications for juvenile idiopathic arthritis. Past surgical history, no history of any surgical intervention in the past. Personal history, patient is vegetarian by diet, unmarried, no history of any substance abuse, patient is non-alcoholic and non-smoker, patient's sleep appetite were decreased, bowel and bladder were normal. Drug and allergic history, no history of any allergic drug reaction in the past, patient was taking following medications inconsistently. Tablet methotrexate 10 mg once weekly since 10 years, tablet iron folic acid OD since 10 years, tablet etorecoxib 10 mg SOS since 10 years, tablet methylprednisolone 4 mg BD since 5 to 7 years, and tablet tofacitinib 5 mg OD since 5 years. Family history. Patient lives in a joint family. No history of such illness in family with no short stature or any bony deformity. Developmental history. Patient attained all developmental milestones as per age. No history of delayed eruption of teeth. Menstrual history. Patient had menarche at age of 13 years and she had history of excessive bleeding at the time of menarche for 4 weeks. At present, her cycle is 4 to 5 by 28 to 30 days. Occupational and social history. Patient is literate and doing self-study for first year undergraduate college. Patient is socially active and participating in recreational activities with help of family members. No history of any biochemical or toxic environmental hazards in surroundings. Functional history. Patient need assistance for transportation. Patient is unable to participate in household activities. Patient can take care of herself, personal hygiene, bathing, eating, and grooming. Patient can sit without support, but unable to do standing, walking, and cross-leg sitting. Thank you so much. Now I want to call upon stage Dr. Khyati Jain for further examination of patient.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be talking about the examination of the patient. General physical examination. The patient was examined in the lying down and the supine position. Patient was conscious and oriented to time, place, and person. Attitude, bilateral hip and knee in flexion position with ankle in the mid-equinus position. Patient was short in stature, height was about 4.5 feet. Looking ill, thin, with generalized muscle wasting in the lower limbs. Hair growth is normal, conjunctiva and tongue pale, no signs of clubbing, cyanosis, jaundice, lymphadenopathy, and generalized edema. Skin appears normal, no skin lesions like patches, nodules, or malar rash were present. Chest was bilaterally symmetrical with no rachitic or scorbutic rosary, no pigeon chest and hurricane sulcus. Umbilicus was centrally placed and all the vitals were within normal range. Talking about the systemic examination, higher mental and cognitive functions were normal, no tremors or involuntary movement were present, cranial nerve examinations were normal, eye examination, tearing eye with normal vision, normal ophthalmic examination with no evidence of uveitis was present. The respiratory system examination was non-significant. CVS, no history of dyspnea, chest pain with exertion or palpitations were present. Heart sounds were normal, S1, S2 present, with no murmurs were audible. Talking about the gastrointestinal tract, no organomegaly on palpation, no history of frequent episodes of diarrheal or blood in stools and vomiting. CNS examination, sensory examinations were normal, with normal light touch and pinprick. Reflexes were normal, reduced bulk of muscles with a normal tone. Coordination of the upper limb were normal. Talking about the regional examination that we conducted, cervical and the spinal movements were normal. No deformity or swelling was present. No history of numbness and tingling or radiation over the extremities or neck movement. Shoulder external rotation was mildly restricted. Elbows were in flexion position with mild restriction of the right elbow in ROM of flexion and extension. Bilateral wrist was in ulnar deviation. In left hand, index finger had ulnar deviation at the PIP joint and was subluxated. Right hand's little finger had ulnar deviation at the PIP joint. Grip strength and hand function were mildly reduced in both the hands. Talking about the local examination now, we examined the patient in the lying down position. On inspection, skin was hairy and appeared normal with no swelling, no dilated veins, no puckering of skin over the joints was seen. Bilateral knee joint appeared large compared to other bones and joints. Muscle wasting was present with no fasciculations. No deformities of the long bones was present. Both the knee joints were approximately in 60 to 80-degree flexion attitude. On palpation, skin contour, texture, and temperature and sensation were normal. Bony surface was expanded and bluntly irregular. Dimension of the bone in both the knee joints were increased. Patellar tap or fluctuation test was negative. Tenderness was present over the bilateral knee joint. No redness, warmth was present over the bilateral knee joint. Pulsations were normal and no lymphadenopathy was present. Trans-illumination test for swelling was non-significant. Percussion was non-significant. Passive ROM after deformity was present but painful. Talking about the knee ROM, here are the normal values that we have written side along with the irregular findings. ROM in the passive range of ROM of the right knee was 70 to 135 degrees. On the left side, it was 60 to 135 degrees. Hip ROM, flexion passive range of motion on the right side was 20 to 120 degrees. On the left, it was 10 to 120 degrees. Extension ROM was non-testable. Abduction 0 to 20 degrees on the right side, 0 to 40 degrees on the left. Adduction was 0 to 10 degrees on the right, 0 to 20 on the left. Internal rotation was 0 to 15 on the right side and 0 to 45 degrees on the left. Internal rotation was 0 to 20 degrees on the right and 0 to 40 degrees on the left. Ankle bilateral foot in mild equinus with 5 to 10 degree with restricted dorsiflexion. Dorsiflexion was non-testable on the right side, on the right and the left side. Plantar flexion was 5 to 40 degrees on the right and 10 to 40 degrees on the left. We also performed some special tests on the patient. For the hip joint, we performed the Thomas test, which was positive with 20-degree flexion deformity for the right hip and the 10-degree flexion deformity for the left hip. Right hip was adducted and medially rotated. Ober test was negative. Knee joint, right knee 70-degree flexed with flexion deformity and left knee had 60-degree fixed flexion deformity with mild valgus deformity. Ankle joint, bilateral foot was in mild equinus with 5 to 10 degrees restricted dorsiflexion. Circumferential measurement was approximately equal on both the bilateral lower limbs. Linear measurement, apparent measurement was 71.5 centimeters on the right side and 76 centimeters on the left side with a difference of 4.5 centimeters. True measurement on the right side was 61 centimeter and on the left side it was 65 centimeters with a difference of 4 centimeters. Galeazzi signs was positive on this patient. After obtaining a detailed history and performing a thorough physical examination, the following investigations were carried out. And we have found that there was a decreased level of hemoglobin and the platelet counts. ESR was 47 and rheumatoid factor and CRP protein was positive. DEXA scan had a Z-score of minus 2.5. All the other blood investigations were within the normal range. We also performed some radiological investigations. USG was non-significant. We also did some radiological investigations including the cervical and the lumbosacral spine x-rays along with the affected joint x-rays. Talking about the summary of the examination, a 19-year-old female presented to the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation on 10th of February 2024 with a history of polyarticular involvement of both the small and the large joints of the bilateral upper and lower limbs associated with morning stiffness. The patient was on irregular treatment for juvenile idiopathic arthritis for the past 10 years, which has resulted in gradual and progressive joint deformities, ultimately leading to an inability to stand and walk. Next, I would like to call upon Dr. Naresh Bansal for the radiological discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning to all. This young girl presented with multiple joint pains were presented in our department, and these X-rays were performed due to these joint involvement. X-ray cervical and dorsal spine, X-ray chest, both shoulder, pelvic and both hip joints, both knee joints, both elbow and both hands. So on performing the cervical spine, here is AP lateral cervical spine epilateral X-ray shows there is mild narrowing at mid cervical facetal joints. Otherwise, C1, C2 joint space is relatively normal. On dorsal lumbar spine epilateral, there is mild scoliosis of dorsal lumbar spine with convexity toward left side. Otherwise, this is normal X-ray. There is no significant finding. On chest X-ray, it was normal. There is no pericardial effusion, no pleural effusion, and no cardiomegaly. And there is no patches on these lungs. On shoulder, both shoulders, AP view, there is significant articular erosion in glenohumeral joint and with reduced joint space and juxta-articular osteopenia. On right shoulder, there is relatively normal. In pelvic, with both hips AP view X-ray, there is significant juxta-articular osteopenia, significant loss of right hip joint space, and articular erosion involving the femoral head and acetabulum, resulting deformity of right hip joint. There is also a left hip joint, left SI joint articular irregularity and subarticular sclerosis with its widening. However, left hip joint and right SI joints are normal. In both knee AP lateral X-rays, there is significant periarticular osteopenia, epiphyseal ballooning, and increased intercondylar space, prominent intercondylar notch, and significantly reduced joint space in tibiofemoral region. So there is resultant deformity of left hip joint more, resulting genu valgus deformity. On elbow X-ray, both elbows, right elbow AP lateral, left elbow AP lateral, these shows significant articular erosion at on right side, on right elbow, there is significant articular erosion and reduced joint space leads to deformed joints, more marked at radiohumeral joint, and there is mild soft tissue swelling also. On left side, there is mild joint space narrowing. Here we can see at ulnohumeral joint with relatively intact radiohumeral joint. X-ray both hand with wrist AP view and oblique view showed significant articular erosion of PIP joint of left index finger and PIP joint of right little finger with significant joint space narrowing, resulting subluxation along with the soft tissue swelling. Here we can see the soft tissue swelling. Juxta-articular osteopenia is also there. Significant deformed radiocarpal, intercarpal, carpometacarpal joints with fusion of carpal bones and subluxation at wrist joint with periarticular osteopenia. These findings are more marked on left side. So these findings were consistent with polyarticular type of JIA because it is involving more than 5 joints, and the differential diagnosis was can be rheumatic rickets and hemolytic arthropathy due to intercondylar notch prominence, and for the reason patient was rheumatoid factor positive, so GIA diagnosis was made. Thank you. Over to Department of Rheumatology.
A very good morning to everyone. I'll be discussing the literature review for juvenile idiopathic arthritis. Juvenile idiopathic arthritis is the most common rheumatic disease of childhood. As per the Eiler criteria, it is a heterogeneous group of disorder characterized by an inflammatory arthritis lasting for more than 6 weeks, with an age of onset of less than 16 years, and after excluding other causes like infection, malignancy, and other rheumatic disease. This patient meets the age criteria, the involvement of the joint, as well as the chronicity, fitting into the diagnosis of juvenile idiopathic arthritis. As per Eiler's classification, it is divided into 6 major types, which includes oligoarticular JIA, polyarticular JIA, psoriatic arthritis related, enthesitis related arthritis, systemic JIA, and undifferentiated arthritis. The most common variant in the world is oligoarticular JIA, whereas in India it is enthesitis related arthritis. Coming to the oligoarticular GIA, it is characterized by arthritis affecting 1 to 4 joints during the first 6 months, further divided into 2 categories as persistent oligoarticular GIA affecting less than 4 joints throughout the course of disease, and extending oligoarticular GIA affecting a total of more than 4 joints after the first 6 months. Coming to polyarticular GIA, which is divided into 2 types, that is rheumatoid factor negative and rheumatoid factor positive. This patient meets the criteria for rheumatoid factor positive polyarticular JIA. Other type include psoriatic arthritis, which is characterized by arthritis and psoriasis, or arthritis with features like dactylitis, nail changes, or a history of psoriasis in a first degree relative. Coming to enthesitis related arthritis, that is characterized by enthesitis with arthritis, or either enthesitis or arthritis with at least 2 of the features like presence or history of sacroiliac joint tenderness or inflammatory lumbosacral pain, positivity of HLA-B27 by PCR, onset of arthritis in a male of more than 6 years, acute symptomatic anterior uveitis, and history of any spondyloarthropathy, sacral or IBD or Reiter's syndrome in a first degree relative. Coming to systemic onset JIA, which is characterized by arthritis in more than 1 joint with or preceded by fever of at least 2 weeks duration, documented to be daily for at least 3 days, and accompanied by 1 or more of the systemic features like evanescent erythematous rash, lymphadenopathy, hepatomegaly or splenomegaly, or serositis. And undifferentiated arthritis is the arthritis that does not fulfill either of the criteria or is fitting into more than 2 of the above categories. JIA has many extra-articular manifestations, of which most common being the ocular manifestations like chronic anterior uveitis, which is more seen in ANA-positive oligoarticular JIA, more so in young girls, acute anterior uveitis, which can lead to complications like synechiac formation, cataract, or glaucoma. Systemic features like fever, rash, serositis, as mentioned earlier in systemic onset GIA, the macrophage activation syndrome characterized by raised ferritin levels, cytopenias, and growth manifestations like growth retardation, limb length discrepancies, as seen in the case mentioned, osteopenia, flexion deformities, and anemia of chronic disease, raised inflammatory markers like ESR and CRP. So, juvenile idiopathic arthritis requires early and aggressive treatment to prevent the irreversible joint damage and deformities, and delay and irregular therapy, like in this case, can lead to growth retardation, contractures, and functional disability. Methotrexate is the anchor DMARD, and biological therapy can be considered in refractory cases as per the guidelines. So, the JIA requires a multidisciplinary care from rheumatology, PMR department, nutrition, and psychology for optimal long-term outcomes. Regular follow-up and patient adherence are very crucial, as crucial as the choice of drug. Thank you. Now I'd like to call upon my orthopedic colleague for the orthopedic perspective.
Good morning, one and all present here. I'll be presenting before you the orthopedics perspective on this above case. So this patient, a 19-year-old female with a 10-year history of polyarticular juvenile idiopathic arthritis, was referred to the Department of Orthopedics in February 2024 for evaluation of progressive hip and knee flexion deformities. She was admitted in Department of Physical Medicine Rehabilitation, receiving DMARDs intermittently. Despite medical management, she developed significant lower limb contractures, leading to inability to stand or walk independently. So when the patient presented to us in 2024, she had progressive bilateral knee and flexion deformities for nearly 5 years, pain around the knees, and she had difficulty in standing upright. However, there were no history of trauma or infections. Upper limb joints, particularly the elbow and the wrist joint, were intermittently painful with mild functional limitation. No systemic features of active inflammation were present at the time of referral. When we examined the patient, she was found to be of short stature, inability to stand or walk. She was unable to achieve full extension at both hips and knees. There were wasting of quadriceps and gluteal muscle. Hip examination revealed flexion of 20 to 120 degrees with an extension block, restricted abduction, internal rotation on the right side, and asymmetric external rotation. Knee examination showed an FFD of 70 degree on the right side, 60 degrees to the left, though flexion was full. Other joint demonstrated mild restriction consistent with quiescent GIA. This was the radiological investigations that we had at the time of referral. It was already discussed in the previous discussion. So, at the time of evaluation, the patient was found to be skeletally immature and she had residual disease activity. The deformities were judged to be primarily to be in soft tissue in origin, resulting from chronic flexion contractures of hip and knee flexures. Given her age and the active systemic disease, joint replacement was deferred. The plan included gradual deformity correction by soft tissue releases if required, and specifically iliopsoas and hamstring lengthening and posterior capsule release of the knee. Gradual correction of the knee deformity by using Elizarov ring fixator was also opined. However, she was counseled regarding the need for strict physiotherapy and close follow-up. The patient and the family opted for a conservative approach on the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation supervision. Now, I'd like to call upon Dr. Amit Batra sir to throw some light regarding the management undertaken by PMR department.
Good morning, everyone. We'll start with the management. Before starting the management, we will go through a few keywords. The physical medicine rehabilitation provides integrated comprehensive care in the diagnosis, treatment, and rehabilitation management of neurological, musculoskeletal, cardiopulmonary disabilities from acquired or congenital conditions presenting at any stage in life from pediatric to geriatric phases. Rehabilitation is defined as the combined and coordinated use of medical, social, educational, and vocational measures for training and retraining the individual to the highest possible level of functional ability. It is an important part of universal health coverage and a third pillar of medical science. Impairment, any loss or abnormality of psychological, physiological, or anatomical structure or function. In present case, it was synovitis or inflammation of joints due to JIA. The disability is any restriction or lack of ability to perform an activity in the manner or within the range considered normal for a human being. In present case, it was a restricted range of motion of joints. The contracture is tightening of muscles, tendons, ligaments, tissue, or skin that prevents normal movement of a joint or a body part. Contracture is a cause and deformity is an effect. It's a visible misconfiguration. Management of knee contracture, as in our case, it includes physical therapy, stretching, and passive and active range of motion and strengthening exercises to reduce stiffness and maintain activity, bracing, splinting, serial casting, traction, soft tissue lengthening or release, or joint capsulotomy. The deformity is an abnormal shape, structure, or position of a body part resulting from a congenital defect, disease, injury, or abnormal development. It can be due to congenital causes or acquired causes. Among acquired, it can be due to bone, joint, or soft tissue involvement. Since orthopedic department advised surgical management of flexion deformity of both hip and knee joints, but patient had refused for same. Now we decided to rehabilitate patient with the following goals. From the picture we can say her sister is carrying on in her own lap. The goals of rehabilitation were to reduce pain and inflammation of joints, to correct deformity and improve range of motion of hip and knee joint, and improve muscles and ligament functioning, to improve activity of daily living and reduce the associated symptoms, to make the patient ambulate, to participate in social, vocational, and recreational activities, to educate about joint protective measures to prevent joint damage, and to improve the overall function and quality of life. Subsequently, the patient was planned for 2-pin skeletal traction, under general anesthesia to correct bilateral knee flexion deformity. Patient had low hemoglobin levels, 7.2, and osteopenia for which hematinics and calcium vitamin D was started, and blood transfusion was administered on 16 February 2024. On 23rd February 2024, after clearance from anesthetic department, the patient was shifted to operation theatre and modified Russell's traction was applied. 2 Steinmann pins were inserted in the proximal and distal ends of the tibia bilaterally under strict aseptic precautions. Upper pin was inserted to prevent posterior subluxation of tibia. The gradual extension was obtained with upward force on proximal tibia to correct posterior subluxation as the knee gradually extended. As the deformity is corrected, the traction was adjusted accordingly by gradually increasing weight to progressively increase the extension angle and correct the bilateral knee flexion deformity. These are the subsequent images of patient under treatment in the ward. On 15th March, traction was removed, and for residual deformity, bilateral lower limb correction casting was performed, and joint was mobilized every time after cast removal or change. A second correction casting was done on 22nd March 2024, following which the patient was discharged. The patient was readmitted on 3rd April 2024, and a third bilateral lower limb deformity correction casting was performed. Patient was taken on standing frame with cast, and therapeutic standing was then initiated. Ambulation was initiated with the cast in place with the help of assistance of a walker, followed by 2 sticks. After 15 days, the cast was removed. Supervised physiotherapy was continued. The patient was provided a bilateral knee ankle foot orthosis with correction of limb length disparity, enabling assisted walking, first with a walker and subsequently with sticks. Approximately 1 month after discharge, the patient was able to walk independently with knee ankle foot orthosis support without assistive aids. At present, patient has become ambulatory and knee deformity is approximately corrected. The patient continues to receive ongoing medical management for juvenile idiopathic arthritis with calcium, vitamin D3, iron supplements, along with regular physical and occupational therapy, exercise, balanced diet, and meditation. The rehab goals we achieved in this case: significant reduced deformity, right knee from 70 to 18 degree, left knee from 60 to 10 degree of lower limb, improved muscle strength and active range of motion, right knee 18 degree to 135, and the left knee range of motion we achieved at 10 to 135 degree. Significantly improved activities of daily living and reduced associated symptoms. And at present, patient is ambulatory, actively participating in social, vocational, and recreational activities. We can have a short video of her. Thank you so much. I would call upon for the orthopedic point of view now for the remaining hip deformity and shortening of right lower limb. I would request Dr. Rajeshwari Jindal to please accompany the patient. She is right now here in front of all of you. It's only due to a strong treatment done under Department of PMR and her strong motivation that she is now able to walk. She is able to lead a very good quality of life at least, and she's too happy right now. A few words if she wants to speak.
हेलो एवरीवन, कैसे लग रही हूँ मैं? तो आप लोगों ने देखा होगा तो मैम की वजह से मैं कहीं से भी आना जाना सब कुछ बंद ही हो गया था। 9 साल तक तो कहीं सिर्फ हॉस्पिटल तक के चक्कर काट रही थी, उसके अलावा कुछ भी नहीं। तो बाहर जाना वगैरह सब बंद। और जब मैम के पास गई इतना ठीक थी, मेरा मार्केट विजिट करना, मूवी देखना, दोस्तों के साथ बाहर जाना, इतना सब हो चुका है कि मैं सच में बहुत ही ज़्यादा खुश हूँ। हाँ, लोगों को लगता होगा कि मैं परफेक्ट नहीं हूँ इतनी ज़्यादा, बट मुझे पता है कि मैं मेरे लिए कितनी ज़्यादा परफेक्ट हो चुकी हूँ। थैंक यू मैम, बहुत ही ज़्यादा, क्योंकि सब डॉक्टर ने मना कर दिया था कि नहीं बिल्कुल ठीक हो ही नहीं सकती, कभी नहीं चल सकती, क्योंकि पैर सीधे होना ही बंद हो गए थे। और मैंने भी उम्मीद छोड़ दी थी कि मुझे नहीं लगता कि अब मेरे पैर सीधे होंगे, मैं चल पाऊंगी। पर सुधीर सर ने मैम के पास भेजा और मैम ने कर ही दिया। और मैं सच्ची में बता रही हूँ, मैं यूं ही नहीं कह रही, मैम सच्ची में इतनी स्वीट है ना, क्योंकि मेरे नखरे बहुत ज्यादा होते हैं, मैं बहुत एक्टिंग करती हूँ।
Going forward with the presentation, the orthopedic point of view for the remaining hip and hip deformity and the shortening of the right lower limb for further improvement. So between 2024 and 25, the patient underwent a structured rehabilitation program combining of traction, physiotherapy and splinting under PMR guidance, resulting in significant correction of knee flexion deformities from approximately 70 to 18 degrees. Hip flexion deformity, however, remained static at around 20 degrees. Pain and swelling episode became infrequent and disease activity remained quiescent. So currently, she represented to us for review with partially corrected deformities after prolonged conservative management, and the patient is now ambulatory independently with knee ankle foot orthosis. The hip flexion was till 120 degrees with limited extension and a persistent 20-degree flexion deformity. Abduction mildly restricted on the right side, however, internal rotation remains reduced. At the knees, the flexion is full bilaterally with FFD of 18 degrees over the right and 10 degrees at the left with mild valgus deformity. This is the current radiographic evaluation of her hip and knees. So presently, the patient is skeletally mature and the GIA is in remission with arthritic changes which can be seen in both the hip and the knees. For the hip, we'll go for arthroplasty, total hip arthroplasty, using a modular personalized implant due to her small size vestibular cup and small size femoral head. For the knee, we'll go for total knee arthroplasty, again with a modular personalized implant indicated due to advanced degenerative changes and residual bony deformities. Must to mention, squaring of the condylar can be femoral condyles can be seen in the radiographs. Stage correction is planned, hip to be addressed first to restore proximal alignment, followed by knee correction. Postoperatively, intensive postoperative physiotherapy is essential. Continued rheumatologic control is vital to prevent recurrence of deformities. To summarize our perspective, early in this disease, conservative management aims to maintain joint mobility, delay contracture, and once skeletal maturity and disease quiescence are achieved, surgical correction can restore alignment and function. In this present case, deformities that once precluded ambulation have been significantly improved through coordinated care. She now stands at the threshold of definitive reconstructive surgery with a stable systemic profile. Now, I would like to call upon Sir for the take-home message.
Thank you for the take-home message. We selected this patient because of her young age, her lost quality of life, just because of progressive deformity, which could have been prevented with timely referral to physical medicine and rehabilitation department. The current view is that responsibility of a doctor does not end when the temperature touches normal and stitches are removed. The patient must be restored and retrained to live and work within the limits of his disability, but to the maximum of his capacity. Early integration of PMR principles, even in the acute settings, is crucial to prevent secondary complications, optimize functional recovery, ensure a safe and effective transition from hospital to home. For these type of patient, a multidisciplinary approach at proper time should be taken. Now I would call upon, or I would request Dr. Mrinal Joshi sir for his future vision on department. Thank you so much.
Well, I admit that I'm a dreamer and I always dream. As Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. So I'll share the dream. And we all are from different departments. We have our needs, we have our dreams, and we struggle every day to fulfill our dreams. Okay. And you just now saw this wonderful story of treatment and rehabilitation of this young girl. And And now you must have felt that there are some psychological issues also. People have post traumatic disorder, chronic pain disorder affecting the psychology. And it took me 16 years. So, probably today somebody is joining as a psychological counselor in our department. Because we see a lot of polytrauma patients, we see trauma patients, we see chronic pain patients with psychological issues, but unfortunately, we don't appreciate it. As Amit said, that we are sometimes more interested, we become more mechanical. We're interested in temperatures and counts and CRPs and all those things. And it took me 16 years, let me tell you. I've been persistently trying to get a psychological counselor in rehab department, and it has materialized after 16 years. So that is how much time and effort it has took. Even our occupational therapist, we only had one, then we had none. And it took us, how many years? I think some 7 or 8 years to get significant number of occupational therapists and physiotherapists. And I think when we joined, I joined as a registrar, we had, I think 5 physiotherapists, all of them retired. None was there in the department. And now fortunately, I think we have 18, isn't it? 18 physiotherapists. And then we get 150 interns in our department. So it takes a lot of time. And now I have the musical chair of the medical superintendent is now with me. So, so now a lot of time, what happens, there are different departments that have their problems and dreams, and I totally acknowledge them. And I must tell you that there are so many bottlenecks, I can tell you. I have that minuscule experience of RRC, but you can just extrapolate. So all the rigid rules and the lack of freedom to all the clinicians are de facto bottlenecks. And somehow you will know today by the RMCTA we have even more bottlenecks for today. So I don't know what is the plan of the government, but I think as clinicians, our primary care and primary responsibility is toward the patients. And let us keep that in our mind and work into that direction. Now this is a gap analysis. So first dream, I think, that is shared by everybody is gap analysis. So that is my first dream, because it's a huge hospital. Even though we are officially 2,500 bed hospital, but there are more than 4,000 patients every day admitted in SMS hospital. And we just don't have to provide that paracetamol tablet. We also have to provide them a comprehensive health care. And we need a lot. And the contribution of PMR is expected a lot. So we have to fill that gap. We have to fill that gap in services. We have to fill that gap in knowledge. And we have to fill that gap in equipments. So that is one of my dreams. The other thing is telemedicine. I think it is something which is not utilized, and it can be utilized by a lot of departments. What I have learned over years, over I think now 30 years now in PMR department. Imagine most of the people who get spinal injury are, we did some research, we have published data also. The average income is 6,500 a month. Okay. Now you can imagine maybe 10,000. This is what you give for your maybe housemaid or whoever works in your home. And the average family size is 4.5, single earning member, mostly male, gets injured. And most of the riskier jobs are usually done by the poor strata of the society. And they are the people who get injured. And they have an active bladder, overactive bladder. They just need an oxybutynin, nothing, cost 5 rupees. But that poor man is living in Savai Madhopur. Now he has to come to us, spending 7,500 rupees for the taxi. They have to pay more. If you are fit, then probably it will cost you less. But if you are diseased, it will cost you double. And I think you know that. And then he comes to us and we write an Oxyspas 2.5 milligrams costing 2.5 rupees. What is the cost of healthcare? If we can have telemedicine, we can just sort that problem in Sikar or wherever village he is sitting there. And it is so easy to do. And I think this is something that I have a dream. Even in pressure ulcers, you should come and see some of our patients. You can put your whole hand into the pressure ulcer. If we could have just a photograph, if he could just contacted us, how to prevent it and not to allow it to expand, we could have saved life. We could have played multiple facial flap surgeries or myocutaneous flap surgeries. Imagine India, not Jaipur. Imagine India. We have a disabled person who needs an ankle foot orthosis, something like she is wearing. Now, how he is supposed to come? So this is one of the projects that we are actually trying to work into. But I'll tell you, there is a project of 25 crores sanctioned by Honorable Chief Minister for this year, and it's been 7 months, and we have been writing this program in different ways to get money. But the money lies with the Department of Social Justice, and I'm pretty sure that it will be unutilized. It will not be spent, as my previous experience with the Department of Social Justice. And what the vision was that we have a mobile app. We scan the foot, and we have a software. It can have an image, a 3D image of the foot, and then we put it on a computer, sort it out, and we do a 3D carving of the foot, and then we can make an orthosis and send it to the remote village in India. So that is one of the dream that I have. So that is also part of the telemedicine. That's the future I look. The neuro rehab, and my eyes direct to, oh, he's not here, Dr. Kumawat, because he's opening a neuro center, the Institute of Neurosciences, and we also have a budget in that. So the dream is to do neuro rehab, where we can have deep brain stimulation and exoskeletal robot for training of the paraplegics and the stroke patients. So that is our another dream. And then the biggest problem that we face, every clinician who sees patient probably has some of these patients in his basket, the chronic pain. And I'll tell you, we all have become so telescopic with our own practice, and we try to basically find out or justify the cause of pain with the background of our specialty, and we somehow fail to see the person as a whole. And I think we have to address that, where we have to have cognitive behavioral therapy, psychological inputs, because sometimes you can't fix pain. You have to manage. You have to manage, you have to make things better. And at the end of the day, like if you treat somebody, okay, you get him out of the ventilator, you get him in the ward, and then you ultimately discharge him, get back to home. But if he's not able to earn a living, whatever life you have saved is actually a burden. And so at the end of the day, the important thing is that once you treat, the other thing is return to work. Now I say return to work because I have worked in a system where there was a program called as Return to Work. And the doctors were part of it. And that was in chronic pain clinic in Australia. So we want to have that clinic where we have a comprehensive management for a person, regardless of whatever background he has. He can have a medical problem, or he can have a rheumatological problem, or he just have a pain issue. But we have to get him returned to work. And the last one, this I've already talked about. And the last one is workforce and research. Okay. So these are the major research that you have contributed, including one of the biggest funding that the SMS has received, which was in olfactoring and sheathing cell culture that we did from cribriform plate. This was ICMR project, 4.5 crores, one of the biggest project. And based on that, the stem cell lab was established. But it stopped. We were able to culture the cells, but then they said that now you have to do in rhesus monkeys. So I think that was too much for us to do, and we had to stop that research and withdraw all our projects. INSKI is a Swiss paraplegic center we have just completed, and this project is basically health access and long-term complications in paraplegia. IDAP is Registry of Spinal Injury Patient. This we had published, I think, last year. It's a very, very big measure for spinal cord independence measure, SCIM4. And we are actually right now undergoing RATA, which is Rapid Assessment of Assistive Technology. It's a very, very big project. And this year by WHO, it was awarded as one of the best research projects in the world. And fortunately, we are part of it. And currently, we are doing CHOMU as our project area. The other thing that we need is we have to strengthen the interdisciplinary collaboration. I'm pretty sure people don't know what we do. So I think we should have more interdisciplinary collaboration. I must congratulate Puneet Saxena was that we are consistently doing this, and so that we know what other departments are actually doing. So that's a good thing. And then lastly, about the clinical fellowship. Okay, that's another story. Okay, we wanted to start clinical fellowship long back. I think the first time we applied was, I think, in 2016 maybe, where they wanted all the departments to start the subspecialty fellowship. And we did everything, submitted to the RUHS and all those things. I think most of the department must have submitted their projects also, but they never worked. And so still, that's one of the dream that we have better knowledge, better CMEs, and better work. And I'll just wind up my presentation with that Dr. Rajeshwari showed all the kinds of CMEs that we have done. And to end, we are very passionate about teaching. From last 10 years, we are doing National PG Training Program for PMR from last 10 years. And it's an all-paid training program, very unique, similar to the NSI. So that's what we are doing. Thank you.
Sir, for such a wonderful vision and futuristic approach. And now I would request ADP Dr. Monica Jain ma'am to please deliver the vote of thanks and also announce the next CPC.
Thank you, Shruti. So, indeed, I have missed that important CPC which is being conducted by PMR department. But कल राजेश्वरी मैम मेरे पास आई थी तो वो बोली थी कि the importance of this case is कि वो गोदी में आई थी और चल के गई है. So that is the most beautiful part of this case, and a big round of applause for such an immense and good work done by RRC department, PMR department. And yes, of course, the CPC must be very great. But as usually, Puneet sir and I often talk on the dais that auditorium छोटा हो गया है और audience और छोटी होती जा रही है. तो ठीक है, थोड़ा सा ठीक सा लग रहा है क्योंकि audience भी कम है और auditorium भी छोटा है. But again, my request to all of you is, please ensure to send your resident and encourage your faculty to come here in CPC. There is, if the NMC regulation says, okay, for promotion you need a PCME course. So we cannot put as riders that, okay, if you are getting promotion, it will be based on CPC. तो शायद ये ऑडिटोरियम बढ़ जाए. तो हम वो नहीं करना चाहते. तो इसलिए हम आपसे वापस gentle reminder और gentle request करना चाहते हैं. Please send your residents, even if they belong to pre and paraclinical department. It is a great showcase of the departmental work, what is happening around you. It is an eye opener for all of us. We all are graduates or maybe postgraduates in respective subjects. But this CPC is the jewel of SMS. And this jewel is missed by our eye, and we don't create that vision in our mind that what is happening around, what are the department doing, how you can work like this in an integrated manner. I will also like to share you that I am continuously pursuing a recent point that there should be a division of co-guide. There should be a provision of co-guide, so that within department also you can produce a co-guide, and outside department also we can produce a co-guide and collaborate, because we need to talk about the interdisciplinary approach, and probably this will change the entire research areas where we are allowed and permitted to have a co-guide system across and intra-department. So that I am trying hard, and probably that will be a big yes from RUHS too. So thanks all of you, especially the CPC team, Puneet sir, Shruti, the head of the department, the director of PMR, Dr. Nilal Joshi sir, and who's of course the Honorable MS also, and all the audience who have come and put up a great show by their presence. Thank you all, and I expect that next time the attendance would be much more, and the auditorium will be full, and then we have to think about a bigger auditorium. And secondly, the next CP is from the Department of Anesthesia, Reema ma'am. Please look into that. Poona madam is sitting. So I'm sure that anesthesia is everywhere as pharmacology. So
Next time, audience auditorium will be full.
yes,
Even
so
in our
the
department
anesthesia family is very good. Yeah, we are going to shift it up. So my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you and a lot of love to you, beta. What is your name? Meenal. Okay, nice and all the best. और बहुत खुश हैं हम सब आपको देख के. Thank you very much.